Hello everyone, Mr. No Souls here, and I know I am quite late on doing a Druid video. I have been trying to make this video, and I keep screwing it up. So, I think this is what, now a week? Almost? But here we go, once again, from the top. We're going to discuss really quick. They're nature's casters, protectors, and guardians of natural environments, and they also have the ability to take on animalistic forms. They're kind of shamanistic, um, but not necessarily in the classical sense. They're more closely aligned to clerics um, than I would say the actual like shaman that you might expect. So, a nature priest of primal power. Your primary ability, which is what you're going to be using for your casting, is wisdom. You have the same hit die as a cleric. You have two saving proficiencies, which is the intelligence and wisdom proficiencies. And then you have two skill proficiencies from Arcana, Animal Handling, Insight, Medicine, Nature, Perception, Religion, and Survival. Most often, I feel I see druids with the Nature proficiency. However, that is not always the case. You also have simple weapons proficiencies right out the gate. However, there is ways to get martial and medium. You also have light armor and shields. Now, as I said, most of the time I recommend simply going for the starting equipment of straight gold, in which you notice that they're very low, only being 50. However, if you choose to actually get the starting equipment, you can choose leather armor, shield, sickle, which is a weapon of a type, Druidic Focus as a quarterstaff, which is quite popular, both for thematic and also damaging perspectives. You also have the Explorer's Pack, which is a backpack, bedroll, 2 flasks of oil, 10 days of rations, rope, tinderbox, 10 torches, and a water skin. You also have the Herbalism Kit, which is quite useful because you can use this to make potions of healing. Thematically, you can also have it to make other potions as well, but you more often than not have to talk to your DM to get value out of that. Sorry, I'm a little sick, so I have some tea to help me not lose my voice talking through this. Now, becoming a druid, as level 1, you get the core druid table and the druid features table. But if you choose to multi-class into them, you do get the core druids table, their hit dice, and light armor and shields. So, just about everything, but you don't gain any skills. You also gain the features at level 1, which is the standard spellcasting, druidic primal orders. So, here you go. We're going to go real quickly, just look through what the actual feature table is. As you can see, it is quite full. There's a lot to it that you're going to be getting right out the gate. And also note that as they are a native caster, these guys do get 9th level spells. So, not a lot, but they do have some. Level 1 spellcasting, you have cantrips, of which you get 2. These are the preferred ones, but again, I'm not here to talk about spells. As for your spell slots, you get a total. You get all your spell slots. Okay, so only on long rest you get your spell slots back. But how many level 1s when you reach level 4 and 10 you get an additional prepared? You get to have 4 level 1 spells. So you have quite a bit of flexibility, and the Druid spell list is quite good. We will go through that a bit later. You can change your spells only after a long rest, which is better than some, like the Bard, where you can only do it if you level up. You have the ability to swap these out on a long rest, which is nice. The Wisdom is your spellcasting ability. You also have to have a Druidic Focus, which is a Sprig of Mistletoe, a Quarterstaff, or a Yew Wand. The reason why you choose the Yew Wand, which doesn't necessarily have damage associated with it, is that it is lighter. So if weight capacity is a factor, having that reduced weight is better. A Sprig of Mistletoe does eventually dry out and you need to replace it. So again, environmental factors are in effect with the Druid right out the gate. Now, you also at level 1 always have the ability to cast Speak with Animals, which is very useful for more role-playing possibilities. It also gives you the ability to speak with some of the familiars that you might be gaining as a Druid, or if you cross-class as like a Druid Ranger. That's a really strong RP thing that some people like to do, and then being able to talk to your pet is quite nice. So you also gain the ability to leave hidden messages, which anyone can automatically spot if they have a DC 15 intelligence investigation check that they pass. However, unless you have a magical effect, you cannot understand it. So you might know there's a message, like a rogue might be able to find it, but without the ability to decipher it through magic, they will only know that there's a message there. So, something to note. Now, you also gain your Primal Order right out the gate, which is either being a Magician or Warden. As I said, you do gain martial weapons and medium armor, so you can become a little bit tankier, which is also kind of a boon because you do gain this Primal Order right out the gate if you cross class. So in some ways you're kind of protected from losing this option because of it, but also you kind of, if you already have that medium armor and martial weapons, it makes it a little bit easier to pick the magician tree for druids. However, that's not 100% true because, like, let's say you're a bard and you want to also get druid. Well, then you don't have that martial weapons. But if you want to do the like caster kind of side and be more like a nature battle mage support group kind of thing, you're effectively choosing to be a weaker mage of a battle mage. So limitations, but you're not necessarily gated out. It's just you really have to think hard on, are you going to be in there trying to cast spells, or are you going to be more backline supporting? Because if you take in wild shape, you can't cast spells in wild shape. So that's something very important to note. This is more useful if you're not wild shaping. This is more useful when you are wild shaping. Or no, sorry. This is more useful if you're going into like casting. This is more useful to get into position to be wild shaping. Sorry, my word. Level 2, you gain wild shape. As a bonus action, you can turn into a beast. You have a number of uses, which is twice right out the gate. And you can gain back one use on a short rest. You gain all uses back on a long rest. And I just want to point out something right here. You do not get many wild shapes. Even at the highest level, you're only having 4. So that's a pretty heavy reduction in the number of times that you can change shape, especially because, like the Barbarian and also Cleric, you can consume those like special class casts to do other things with it. And I'll show you a little bit because there is some degree of conversion that you can use for spell slots to like wild shape and so on, but there are limitations to it. You'll see. Now, as I said, number of uses, known forms. Here we go. Your so you have 4 known beast forms that you get to choose from, and it's from a listing. Also, you can't choose anything with a fly speed. Let's see. So you can go look at it. So these are your choices: ape, badger, bat, black bear, boar, so on and so forth. This is effectively the listing that you will be gaining. Of course, you can't pick all of these right out the gate. You have to have a certain difficulty rating, but that's not a big deal. They recommend the rat, riding horse, spider, and wolf. However, you can choose others. You also need to have a long rest in order to be able to swap out those animal forms that you can choose. Also, whenever you reach certain druidic levels, your number of known forms and maximum challenge rating increases, as shown on this table. So, at level 2, you only have 4, and you only get to choose 1/4 your CR. At level 4, you get 6 known 4s, and you get to choose half. And once you hit level 8, that is when you will have your maximum known number of forms, which is 8. And then you can choose a CR rating of 1 and also gain flying forms. So, you don't have a massive number of forms, but you can cover just about everything you're most likely going to want to do with these 8 forms. You're going to have a flying form, you're going to have a support form, you're going to have a combat form, you're probably going to have a swimming form, you might have a debuffing form, something that has like poison, for instance. Quite a few different options. Again, 8 is more than enough, I think. And while you can't necessarily turn into every single animal, talk to your DM. Maybe you can convince to get a variant spider form that gives you a even stronger venom choice or something like that, if that's really what you're interested in. Again, I don't recommend the monster manual as being needed because there are so many creature stat blocks out online for free. Go look them up. Go have a conversation with your DM. Consider that when you're really looking at what forms you want to have that meet these requirements here. Now, when you're wild shaped, you retain your personality, your memories, and your ability to speak. That one sometimes gets ruled out, like if the creature you turn into doesn't have a mouth. How are you speaking? But not always. Sometimes the DM allows that. I personally am, if it can't talk with its mouth and it doesn't have some other appendage for speech that, you have some conceptual understanding of how to use in the way of human speech or whatever language you're trying to communicate in, you don't have the ability to speak. But not every DM worries about this. You also gain a number of temporary hit points when you assume a wild shape. The number of temporary hit points equals your druidic level. So at level 2, you get 2 hit points. At level 4, you get 4 hit points. At level 20, you're gaining 20 temporary hit points. It's not that great. I really don't know why they added that in. It's nice, I guess, but it really doesn't do too much. Now, game statistics. You can choose between the B stat block and your stat block, but it really is a matter of which one's higher, and this includes your skills and saving throws and proficiencies. So, there you go. Again, you have no spell casting while in wild shape. However, you can maintain spells that you've previously cast and then entered wild shape. So your concentration spells are safe. However, you still have to make the saves if you get hit while casting them. Objects. Your ability to handle objects is determined by the form's limbs rather than your own. So there's questions on whether or not the equipment that you previously wearing, if you were a Goliath barbarian druid, let's say, and you for some reason chose to have armor on instead of being a la natural, you know, you could say that the armor might fit a bear, but if you turn into a normal sized spider, you lose that bonus. That's perfectly fine, and if it melds into the body, you don't get any bonuses. If it's enchanted, you don't get those effects, so on and so forth. However, if it were to fit on the bear, you could argue that its improvements to your AC and the losses to your dexterity, because your dexterity saving throws would be impacted. Yeah, maybe it can fit. It really depends on how the DM rules the size, shape, and equipment effects. So, I've now gone through this. You also gain Wild Companion at level 2, which is effectively the Find Familiar, and you lose them after a long rest. But it's just a way to always have a magical buddy / animal available at all times. And they can, of course, be like your hawk. Actually, they call it out right there, right out the gate. Is very useful for doing the aerial reconnaissance, also an owl for nighttime aerial reconnaissance, or rats for getting into those deep, dark places that are not so friendly to living things, but rats can always find a way. Personal opinion. Level 4, you get the ability score improvement. At level 5, you get Wild Resurgence. So once each of your turns, so every turn, when you have no use of wild shapes left, you can give yourself one use by expending a spell slot. No actions consumed. So if you're in combat, it's effectively a free action. Give yourself a wild shape. Lose a spell slot. So you lose a level 1 spell slot, you gain the ability to take a shape. It's not phenomenal, but it's not terrible. Issue is you can't do so again until you have a long rest. So it's a one-time thing. But it's a one-time thing that can be the make or break difference between living and dying. Level 7, you get Elemental Fury. This one is for any Druid cantrips. So if you go Warlock and this, your Eldritch Blast would not be gaining also a Wisdom modifier. Just saying, that's not how that works. You also gain Primal Strike, so once on each of your turns, when you hit a creature with an attack roll, using a weapon or beast form, you can choose them to take 1d8 of cold, fire, lightning, thunder, all good things. It's a good way to get around resistances, and it gives you a little extra damage. It's just a really nice little addition, but it only happens once each turn. So it doesn't scale that aggressively, but it is useful to give your kit flexibility. Then you have to wait a little bit to level 15, where you get an improvement upon it, and then you get to take your 10 feet Druid cantrips and supercharge them to 300 feet range. Yeah, that's pretty big. That is actually a very powerful buff there, especially when you're trying to do like really tricky stuff like, oh, hey, I know someone that really likes to immediately cast invisibility to run away, and that's like their first move. They always want to do that. Well, from 300 feet away, Fire Fury. Or Fairy Fire, sorry. I speak English, I swear. Boom. Now they lose the ability to go invisible. They didn't even realize you were there, and now you have set up the rest of the party for the subsequent attack. Like, that 300 feet range, if played correctly, can be make or break on the start of the engagement to like subdue a target or get through a specific area, because you might not be able to reach from one direction because it's a solid wall, but actually you can go around the other side of the cavern and there's a hole that you can see through, and because now you have a 300-foot range, you can actually hit that lever or whatever it is and open a door for everyone because you have massive range. It's not game breaking, but it is respectable. It has use cases. But again, Druid cantrips. You also gain Primal Strike, so you then gain 2d8s. That can be cold, fire, lightning, thunder damage. Again, it's not huge, but it gives you flexibility. And also note, it says an attack roll. It doesn't have to be a melee weapon. So if you had half a dozen explosive barrels set up underneath a staircase, and you're luring a collective of town guards down into a cellar to try to bust your group, and you have a way out through another hidden passage, you could, in theory, bait them, hold them around the staircase, pull back, and then just standard bow and arrow. Doesn't need much damage, hits it, do fire damage, set them all off. You've pretty much immediately have to do a morality check if your group runs it, but you could set an entire group of guards on fire very easily with that. So, again, creative use. Creative use. You don't need to spend a bunch of money to get a fire arrow. You have effectively a fire arrow always ready. At 18, you get beast spells. While using wild shape, you can cast spells in beast form, except spells that have material components or have consumes material components. I don't really get that restriction. I would more understand the restriction around verbal, like you can't say things correctly or whatever because the animal's mouth doesn't, like, while able to speak human, it doesn't actually like speak common well enough to work or something. But like, why can't you just have like a satchel that you put down on the ground and then you could like pick up and then cast material component? Like, why could a bear paw not do it? Or like have a restriction like certain animals can't cast versus like, it's a strange one. I don't necessarily agree with the level 18 restriction on spellcasting, but that is a very good improvement. It's a good improvement, but it's not the best in the world. And at that point, you're locked in. You're a druid at that point. You're not going to be grabbing another group because you're not going to be getting a subclass if you choose to dip into another group. At 18, you need 3 levels to be able to choose a subclass in any of the other classes. Therefore, like, if you do choose to grab another class, you're going to be relegated to the most basic, like, fundamental. Like, maybe you want rogue for the expertise or bard for the expertise or something like that. But more often than not, you're going to get far more benefit out of just getting to level 20 and getting that Archdruid right there. Again, 19 is the epic boons as regular. Archdruid has 3 bonuses to it. First off is the evergreen wild shape. Whenever you roll initiative, as long as you have no use of wild shape left, you regain 1 expended use of it. Effectively, if combat happens, you automatically have 1 wild shape. It's nice. It's not phenomenal, but it's nice. Next is Nature Magician, which is more useful-ish. You can convert uses of wild shape into spell slots, and it's no action to do it. You choose a number of unexpended uses of wild shape and convert them into a single spell slot, with each contributing 2 spell levels. For example, if you use 2 uses of wild shape, you produce a level 4 spell slot. So if you were to consume all 4 of your spell slots, you could get a level 8. Or wait, let me see. 2, 2, 2. Yeah, so 8. Yeah, I'm right. Jeez, I swear I can do multiplication and addition. You can't use it again until long rest. So effectively, you could burn all your spell slots to go and get a tier 8 spell if you, for some reason, had all your wild shapes, but not any of your higher level spell slots. And then you could go and like consume one of your lower level 1 spell slots to then become a wild shape, so then you could wild shape afterwards or something to that effect. But it's so situational. I feel like there are more powerful options that you could go for as a druid thematic ability. I have mixed feelings on this. The most interesting one to me is this longevity. The primal magic you use cause you to age more slowly. For every 10 years that pass, your body ages only 1 year. While that's not a game-breaking like ability and has no use in combat, it is perhaps the most impactful thematically. You're not immortal, but you're effectively a Jedi. You're Yoda if you wanted to be. Be a green gnome druid, and there you go. You're now a 300-year-old like little toad creature that can hop and use magic. These are the level 0 spells. This is the level 1 spells. Your level 2 spells. Your level 3 spells. Your level 4 spells. 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. As you can see, not the largest as it goes further down, but you don't have a lot of spell slots at that level anyways. So it's not that big of a deal. Now, the bigger choices are your Druid subclasses, because this is really going to impact how you're going to be playing. Pardon 1 second, I'm going to need this for the throat. Oh, there we go. Chamomile is phenomenal. Don't let anyone talk down about it. Now, right here, you can choose to be connected to the natural world in many of the natural environments that can come out. And you can choose, after finishing a long rest, one of these groups of land, which is arid, polar, temperate, or tropical. In each one of these, you're going to find is a theme. Arid is very much more your fire area, your deserts. Polar is going to be more of your Arctic tundras, and of course is your frost. Temperate is going to be more like meadows, like your, what is it? I'm trying to remember. There's 2 types of forest, but it's effectively more of like your southern European forests, like the forests you're expecting to find in like Germany and France. These gives you a little bit more like shock, but also some of your more tricky movement spells. You're normally going to find more plains and meadows in these kind of temperate areas. And then finally, you have your tropical, which is more of your poison debuffing. Also at level 3, you're then going to be gaining. Oh, I also should point out, and I'm sure everyone already noticed this, you gain more as you level up. At level 9, you get the last of the spells that you're going to gain from your subdomain. And remember, you can swap between these after long rest, so you're not locked into one. Now, at level 3, you gain Land's Aid as a magic action, which will consume your standard actions, which you use for your melee attacks and so forth. You expend a use of Wild Shape, choose a point within 60 feet of yourself, and Vitality Giving and Life Draining Thorns appear within a 10-foot radius sphere on a point. Each creature of your choice in the sphere, which is 10-foot radius again, and that's radius, not diameter. So that's 20-foot bubble. That's a good sized bubble. It has to make that Constitution saving throw. they have to do the spell save against your spell save DC, and they're going to take 2d6 necrotic damage. And if they fail the save, or sorry, if they succeed the save, they take half, and if they fail, they take in the full damage. Now, one creature of your choice gains 2d6 health. So, really useful if you have a barbarian that likes to get into things, monks that like to get into things, fighters that like to get into things, paladins that like to get into things. You know, you're a really sneaky rogue that went all the way deep into the back line to try to kill the cultist, and that head priest was tankier than he thought, and that alpha strike didn't work, and now he's not only up there with the head priest, he's also up there with the head priest's lieutenants, and it's the rogue versus everyone else. It would be a really great thing to drop on them, make sure they don't die as easily. Lance Aid. Give them a heal, do some damage. Boom. Two things you're going to want in that kind of situation. And you'll find yourself in that situation more times than you'd like to find yourself if you have a long running campaign. Then the damage and healing, the dice for both of those, damage and healing, are increased at 1d6 when you reach the druid levels 10 and 14 to 3d6 and 4d6, which is respectable. At level 6, you gain natural recovery, and you can cast one of your level 1 plus spells that you prepared from a circle spell without expending a spell slot. You have to have a long rest before you can do it again. In addition, when you finish a short rest, you can choose to expend a spell slot to recover. So you can gain back anything up to a level 6. Now, there are some restrictions. A spell slot can have a combined level that is equal to or less than half your druid level rounded up. And it caps out at level 6. So once you're level 12, 6 is the highest you can get. Which, the 6th level spell is pretty high up there. So we have that. Level 10, you gain Nature's Ward. You're immune to poison. You have resistance to damage types associated with your current land choice. So, again, fire, cold, lightning, poison. Pretty useful if you're going to environments where you're going to be dealing with that, like you're going into the Hells. Being fire resistant might be useful. Or you're going up into the North Pole. Cold resistance might be useful. Or you're going into really high altitude thunderstorm. Lightning resistance might be useful. Or a swamp. Poison resistance might be useful. There we go. Now, level 14, the last for the Circle of the Land, is Nature's Sanctuary. Again, as a magic action, expend a use of Wild Shape, and you can cause a spectral tree and vine to appear in a 15-foot cube on the ground within 120 feet of yourself. They last there for 1 minute, or until you gain incapacitated condition, or die, so they don't persist if you die. You and your allies have half cover while in that area. Your allies gain the current resistance of your nature ward while there. And as a bonus action, you can move the cube up to 60 feet to ground within 120 feet of yourself. Not bad. It allows you effectively to transport your allies through very hot environments or cold environments or so on and so forth, in which they're not likely to really die if they're inside of there. It's a good way to give them like AoE resistances. It's not huge, but it is respectable. Now, this one is more focused on animals. This is adopting animal forms and guarding the wild, and it really will be buffing your wild shape. The previous one was more of a caster support kind of design. Sorta, you also had a lot of offensive ability with it. The Circle of the Moon is really about buffing up your wild shapes and making those wild shapes even more impactful. Right out the gate, you get challenge rating, which is the maximum challenge rating from the form equals your druid level divided by 3, rounded down, so instead of a fourth, it's a third. That 25% to 33 repeating. That's not bad. Also, your armored class until you leave the form equals 13 plus your wisdom modifier if the total is higher than the beast AC. That can be quite powerful, especially when you're a tiny little spider that could be stepped on. Having the ability to not get stepped on is quite useful. Your temporary hit points now becomes 3 times your druidic level. That becomes more respectable. When you're level 20 and you're all of a sudden gaining 60 HP temporary hit points for wild shaping, that is respectable. Don't laugh at that. Now, level 3, Circle of the Moon spells. You are always going to have these spells prepared right out the gate. You're going to have Cure Wound, you're going to have Moonbeam, you're going to have Starry Wisp, 5 Conjure Animal, 7 Font of Moonlight, 9 Mask Cure Wounds. Oh, just decent stuff. At level 6, you're going to gain your improved circle forms. So that's going to give you Lunar Radiance, which is each of your attacks in wild shape form can deal its normal damage type or radiant damage, which is respectable. You can also remember you gain the elemental fury all the way up here. So remember you're gaining that primal strike with that 1d8 at level 7 of fire, lightning, thunder damage, or you can choose to do radiant and this damage as well, so you have again more flexibility inside of your strikes. It's not the most massive improvement, but it is respectable. Again, you have those improvements, and again you can make the choice for every attack. So if you have multi-strike with an owlbear, each one you can choose to hit normal or radiant for your base damage. Now, increased toughness. You can add your wisdom modifier to your constitution saving throws. That's not bad. And considering wisdom is your primary, having that ability to give yourself even more constitution buffs can be very useful if you're acting as a tank, which this would be very indicative of the extra temporary hit points, of being able to add in your wisdom on top of your constitution. That's a very powerful way to be able to tank and handle those kind of devastating blows that you might run into. At level 10, you gain Moonlight Step. You can magically transport yourself, reappearing amidst a burst of moonlight. As a bonus action, you can teleport 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see, and you have advantage on the next attack roll you make before the end of your turn. Now note, because you are teleporting, other creatures are not gaining an attack of opportunity on yourself if you appear next to them. So you can appear next to them if they're within 30 feet, gain advantage on your attack, and do that immediately without triggering attacks of opportunity. And this is using a bonus action. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier with a minimum of once. You gain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. You can also regain uses by expending a level 2 plus spell slot for each use you want to restore, no action required. That's pretty nice. At 14, you gain the lunar form, which is moonlight is suffused into you, granting you the benefits of improved lunar radiance, which is once per turn. You can deal an extra 2d10 radiant damage to a target you hit with a wild shape's form attack. Note, this is only when you're wild shaped. And you also gain shared moonlight. When you use Moonlight Step, you can teleport a willing creature within 10 feet of you to an unoccupied space within 10 feet of the destination. So you can teleport them 30 feet, and then if they wanted, they could go 10 feet further and be 40 feet away. It's not bad. It's not a bad engage. Not phenomenal. It's level 14. It has a good bit of utility, and a lot of flexibility. Now, the Circle of the Sea. This is if you're like doing a pirate setting or a sea setting. This is really a druid of water. You're going to immediately gain some sea-themed spells, which are Fog Cloud, Gust of Wind, Ray of Frost, Shatter, Thunder Wave. At level 3, level 5, you get that standard Lightning Bolt and then Water Breathing, which is nice. Level 7, you gain Control Water and Ice Storm. And at level 9, you get Conjure Elemental and Hold Monster. Both very strong level 9 spells. At level 3, you get Wrath of the Sea. As a bonus action, you can expend to use a Wild Shape to manifest a 5-foot emanation, which centers on yourself. It emanates from you, takes the form of an ocean spray that surrounds you for 10 minutes, and it ends early if you dismiss it, manifest it again, or you gain incapacitated condition. When you manifest the emanation as a bonus action on your subsequent turns, you can choose another creature you can see in the emanation. Target must succeed on a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC or take cold damage. And if the creature is large or smaller, they can be pushed 15 feet away from you. To determine this damage, roll a number of d6s equal to your wisdom modifier. Minimum of 1. That's pretty good. It's a really good way of being able to protect yourself or your allies, because you're effectively able to push enemies away from you should you so choose. At level 6, you get Aquatic Affinity. The size of the emanation created by your Wrath of the Sea is increased by 10 feet. So instead of being 30 feet, or where was it? Oh, sorry. Instead of it being a 5-foot emanation, it is now a 10-foot emanation. That's pretty strong. So you're able to push them 15 feet away if they step within 5 feet of you right out the gate. At this point, once they enter that 10-foot area, they're then pushed 15 feet away from you. So you're pushing them about 25 feet away. That's not bad. In addition, you gain your swim speed as your walking speed. Not bad. Level 10, you become Stormborn. Your Wrath of the Sea confers 2 more benefits. You have fly speed equal to your speed. It doesn't actually call out that you have flying. Like, you don't gain flight. You just can fly at the speed of your normal walking speed, which is kind of interesting. I think this is indirectly saying that you do have the ability to fly because you have flight. Don't know. It doesn't technically call it out. I'm going to assume that is the way they mean it to be read. Resistance. You gain the resistance to cold, lightning, and thunder damage. Not bad. That is useful, and it's level 10. Level 14, you gain Oceanic Gift. Instead of manifesting the emanation of Wrath of the Sea around yourself, you can choose it to manifest around one willing creature within 60 feet of yourself. They gain all the benefits. They use your spell saving DC and wisdom modifier for it. In addition, you can manifest the emanation around both the other creature and yourself and expend 2 uses of your wild shape instead of 1 to manifest it. That can be pretty powerful and very impactful. Now, this one, Circle of the Stars. This one is strange. It's very thematically different. I find it interesting, but this is the tricky one. You gain a map, and your focus is a star chart or star map. And you determine its form by rolling on the star map table or by choosing one. It's your focus. It's your druidic focus. So instead of being a staff, a sprig, or a yew wand, which are the 3 standard options, you effectively are gaining a 4th option that you must pick. That is my understanding. While you're holding your map, you have Guidance and Guiding Bolt automatically prepared. And you can cast Guiding Bolt without expending a spell slot. And you can cast it as many times as you have a Wisdom modifier. Again, you regain all in Long Rest. This is strange. I am kind of shocked to see that just right out the gate. It's a little different, and it's kind of odd that it's only allowed on Guiding Bolt and not Guidance. If you lose your map, you can perform a 1-hour ceremony to magically create a replacement. This ceremony can be performed during a short or long rest, and it destroys the previous map. So if someone stole it, you could destroy that map and summon it back. Here are your choices for what the star map is like. You can have a glass disc, a crystal engravement, a collection of maps bound in an ebony cover, an owlbear-hide tooled with stellar symbols, a stone tablet with fine holes drilled in it, or a scroll bearing depictions of constellations. It's interesting. So you are pretty much bound to the cosmos and the nature of the astral plane with this in some form. And at level 3, as a bonus action, you can expend your wild shape features to take on a starry form rather than shape shifting. So effectively, you're gaining a constantly available, not exactly wild shape, but it is effectively a wild shape. But there's fundamental difference, and we'll talk through it. While you're in this starry form, you have everything that you normally do, but you glow. Your joints glimmer like stars. Your glowing lines connect them as if on a star chart. You then gain the ability to shed bright light in a 10-foot radius and dim light for an additional 10 feet. So something that you would expect to be like a light domain cleric would have this ability to just have a light. They're the class that they're the night light, effectively. It's interesting. The form lasts for 10 minutes. Ends early if you decide to dismiss it, gain incapacitated, or use the feature again. Whenever you assume your starry form, choose one of the following constellations glimmering on your body, and it comes with certain benefits. You gain the Archer, which is the constellation of the Archer, and when this is active, as a bonus action on your subsequent turns while it lasts, you can make a ranged attack spell, hurling luminous arrows at targets, one creature within 60 feet of yourself. On hit, the attack deals radiant damage equals to 1d8 plus your wisdom modifier. So it's almost as strong as Eldritch Blast, which is impressive. But it has a 60-foot range. You can again also increase it to 300 feet. I don't know if this technically counts as a cantrip. So you can't, I don't know if you get that 300 feet increase, but it's something. That is interesting. And this is at level 3, mind you. So not many things have that much hitting power right out the gate that you can constantly throw out every turn. Chalice, a constellation of a life-giving goblet, appears on you. Whenever you cast a spell using a spell slot that restores hit points to a creature, you or another creature within 30 feet of you can regain hit points equal to 1d8 plus your wisdom modifier. It just makes you a better healer. And then the final one that you get is Dragon. Constellation of a wise dragon. You can make intelligence or wisdom checks or a constitution saving throw to maintain concentration. You can treat a roll of 9 or lower on the d20 as a 10. So it allows you to effectively take a base 10. Which isn't bad. It's not bad. Strange, interesting, interesting. I don't necessarily know what to make of this. It's very thematically different than all the other options. At level 6, you gain even more with Cosmic Omen. When you finish a long rest, you can consult your starry map for omens and roll a die. Until you finish your next long rest, you gain access to a special reaction based on whatever you rolled on even or odd dice on the die. Wheel, if it's even, when a creature you see within 30 feet of you is about to make a d20 test, you make a reaction, add 1d6, and add that to the number so you can effectively gain them advantage in a way. Woe is the exact inverse. Within 30 feet of you, they're making a d20 test. You take a reaction, you roll a d6, and subtract from them. That's interesting. You can use this reaction a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier. You regain all expended uses on long rest. Again, it's weird. It doesn't really combo with the rest of it. It doesn't technically call out that you can even give it to yourself. It's only other entities. So it's not even a buff to yourself. But it is interesting. At level 10, you gain the Twinkling Constellation. The constellation of your starry form improves. The 1d8 of the Archer and Chalice becomes 2d8. And while the dragon is active, you now gain flight speed of 20 feet and can hover. Respectable. That is respectable. It actually makes it into a very useful form at this point. I kind of wish they had something else that it does, but or maybe just not call it dragon, but whatever, maybe call it owl. Or I mean, you have the archer, you have the chalice. I don't know. I feel like calling it dragon and then only giving it fly speed at level 10. That that's kind of weak, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. Whenever you start each of your turns in a starry form, you can change your constellation's glimmer on your body. So effectively, you can swap between them per turn, which is pretty useful. It turns you into a very strong off healer, off DPS. You're able to flip between them. You're still able to go cast your spells. And if you note, this doesn't limit you to not being able to be a spellcaster. So while you don't have your wild shape as far as being animals, you do retain your offensive and support abilities more readily with this form. But you have to get to level 10. Interesting. Strange, but interesting. Now, level 14, you gain Full of Stars. While you're in your starry form, you become partially, not potentially, partially incorporeal, giving you resistance to bludgeon, pierce, and slash damage. So, partially incorporeal is really powerful if you know how to use it. You can kind of mess around with bumping into people or being able to steal things. It sucks you get it at level 14, but that's really strong. Overall, I think it's a very interesting class, but it's so thematically different. And I understand why they did it. They effectively did it so that you're not always tempted to burn your wild shapes to be an animal form, which locks you out of your own spells, which kind of sucks. This is to give you full access to all your spells, allow you to cast, and also gain some use of your wild shapes. I wish there was some other way they could have gone about it, but hey, this works. This is an interesting way of doing it. You get to go take on a new shape. You get to go be involved with nature in some form, and you have access to every one of your spells. And you get bonuses to them. That's not bad. I mean, gaining healing bonuses and wisdom intelligence bonuses is pretty useful. Oh, sorry, intelligence, wisdom, and constitution saving throws to maintain concentration. It's not bad. It has its uses. But anyways, guys, I think I finally did it. I'm glad to finally be done with the Druid. This was painful but enjoyable. I wish you all a good day and good night. Adios.